Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. The final thought that I have does go back to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And specifically, it goes back to Tom Brady. And you know who I think the biggest loser in the entire Super Bowl was? It wasn't the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, they're going to be back. Andy Reid's coming back. Eric Bieniemy is clearly coming back after this offseason, and that's kind of another story for another day. Patrick Mahomes is young. Tyreek Hill is still in his prime. Travis Kelce is still in his prime. They're going to be back. They're going to be relevant. As long as Patrick Mahomes is healthy, they're going to be relevant for the next 10 years in the NFL. But you know who the single biggest loser was in the Super Bowl on Sunday? It was a guy who wasn't even participating. It was a guy who was 1,500 miles away in Boston. It was Bill Belichick. Because when I think about Tom Brady hoisting a 7th Super Bowl trophy, you know what I couldn't help but think? It wasn't about Tom Brady. We knew he was great. We knew how great he was coming in. By the way, the last 2 weeks, he beat Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. If there was ever a doubt about how great Tom Brady was, that was put to rest. It wasn't the Patriots. It wasn't the Patriot way. It wasn't TB12. It wasn't Josh McDaniels. It wasn't Bill Belichick. It was Tom Brady. That was put to rest when he basically ended Drew Brees' career a few weeks ago and then ended Aaron Rodgers' MVP season 2 weeks before that, 2 weeks ago. So to me, this wasn't about Tom Brady. We knew how great he was. But you know what this was about to me? The New England Patriots had the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. The greatest quarterback ever. Took them to 9 Super Bowls. And they let him walk. And that was the thing more than anything on Sunday that I could not stop thinking about. The Patriots had this guy on their roster. As an NFL fan, you wait a lifetime for a guy like Tom Brady, like Peyton Manning, like Patrick Mahomes, and they let him walk. And it wasn't because of money. It wasn't because he felt he could do things that the they let him walk because they didn't think he was good enough anymore. And it's crazy. And I mentioned a few minutes ago, and I know all you guys know this, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I host on Fox Sports Radio on Saturday night. And myself and my radio partner, Arnie Spanier, were on air last January when the New England Patriots lost to the Tennessee Titans, pick 6 by Tom Brady, throws it in the hands of a defender, returned, and his career in New England essentially came to an end. But when I say it came to an end, that ended up being his final game, but of course nobody knew it at the time. And I remember it was really cool, and listen, I'm not trying to brag, but one of the cool things I get to do in this job, I get to talk about sports, right? And I get to be on in cool moments and talk about cool things. And that was one of the highlights of my early career. I was on radio when the Patriots got eliminated by the Titans, and I was the first person to get to speak to, is this the end for Tom Brady in New England? Now, at the time, we thought he was going to the L.A. Chargers. But the conversation that night was, is this the end for Tom Brady in New England? And I vividly remember, I will never forget this as long as I'm talking about sports and somebody is listening to it. I remember saying, he's not leaving New England. And here is why. Because even at the time he was 42 years old, at 42 years old, he still gave the Patriots the best chance to win Super Bowls. And I believed at the time, and I was wrong, that the Patriots gave him the best chance to win Super Bowls. That he gave the Patriots the best chance, and that the Patriots gave him the best chance. And that he couldn't go somewhere else, start over from scratch, have success, and on the flip side, the Patriots could not start over with a new quarterback and have success. And I what's the term I'm looking for? I stuck my pole in that ground, Baker Mayfield planting the flag at Ohio State. I stuck that flag in the ground. I said, he ain't leaving New England because he gives them the best chance to win and they give him the best chance to win. And at some point, they are going to realize they need each other. And by all accounts, no one at any point ever said that Tom Brady didn't understand what New England provided for him. The problem was that New England did not appreciate what they had in him. And we all know the story, but it's worth repeating. They had him under contract. They wanted him to retire as a Patriot, 40 years old. But he thought he could keep playing. He led them to a division title, and he wanted to keep playing. And it was last offseason that Bill Belichick finally wrestled control away from him, away from the owner, Robert Kraft, and said, you know what? No, we're ready to move on. We're ready to do our own thing. We're ready to start over. And again, at the time, I thought there's no way they're going to part. The Patriots will realize that this guy still gives them the best chance to win. And instead, it was the opposite. And like I said a minute ago, it's not as though Tom Brady was asking for more money or he was asking for this or whatever. He just wanted to be appreciated, and he wanted to have a team around him that could help him win games at the highest level. And, of course, if you go back to that team in New England, you sit there and say, well, at the time, if you remember, they lost to the Titans, and they really struggled down the stretch, and it was, oh, Brady's losing his touch. Well, in hindsight, it just turns out they didn't have very much talent around him, right? I mean, if you remember back to the end of last regular season, the divisional round of the playoffs, Rob Gronkowski had retired. Antonio Brown had basically been booted from the team. Josh Gordon had been booted from the team. And so it was essentially Julian Edelman and a bunch of dudes you never heard of. And so I think back to that moment, and I think back to all of us, or at least some of us, because I was one of them saying, well, Brady's washed up. I mean, where does he think he's going to go that's better than New England? And by the way, you know who else felt that way? Bill Belichick. He said, you know what, you want to go somewhere else? That's fine. And as it turned out, Tom Brady was right. Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay. It turns out they have real skill position guys in Tampa Bay, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans. Oh, by the way, they have a coach who believes in him, Bruce Arians. And they have an organization that's willing to build around his skill set with the window of we have to win right now. And they sign Rob Gronkowski. They go get Leonard Fournette. They go get Antonio Brown. And as I record here, midnight Eastern, February 8th, 2021, the Tampa Bay Bucks are Super Bowl champs. Isn't that the great thing about the NFL, by the way? Because, I mean, you look at other sports, right? The NBA. If you don't have LeBron, you don't have KD, you ain't winning the championship. College football. You ain't Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, you're probably not winning the championship. College basketball. We'll talk about college basketball in about 2 minutes. But there's not very many teams that can win the championship. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers just won the Super Bowl. And like I said, I can't help but think, as I sit here on Monday morning, the biggest loser was Bill Belichick because he had the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. And he said, you know what, I can do it without you. Well, how'd that work out, Bill Belichick? You went 7-9, and just for fun, I looked it up. 7-9, and when I say 7-9, they went 2-2 to start the season. So they went what? 5-7 down the stretch. Here were their wins. Dolphins before Tua started, Raiders, Jets twice, Ravens, Cardinals, Chargers. That's one team that made the playoffs, the Baltimore Ravens. You know who they lost to? They lost to the Bills 38-9 in Week 16. That was the game Bill Belichick threw the phone. They lost to the Rams 24-3. They lost to the Buffalo Bills earlier in the season. They lost to the Chiefs by 2 scores. Bottom line is the Patriots had the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL, and they let him walk away.